because that email validated so many things in my life and marked the beginning. In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, I am finally doing what I have been wanting to do for a long time now, which is to share my story. Some part of me has always been scared to do this, because this is me showing my full self, sharing very personal and often painful parts of my life that have shaped who I am today. But I don't want to hold back any longer. I am so very proud of my heritage, but for so long I felt afraid to publicly acknowledge it because I felt so much pressure to assimilate, to forget where I came from and my culture, which was very painful for me because in the process I suppressed a very important part of myself. But I am no longer allowing those forces to hide who I am. This and every other month I celebrate the richness, strength, and beauty of my diverse community. I am proud to be Hispanic, I am proud to be Latina, and I am proud to be Mexican. I was born in Oaxaca, Mexico, where I grew up until the age of 6. In Oaxaca, my family and I lived with my grandparents in a room in the back of their house and cooked in a kitchen that looked like this. During my 6 years in Mexico, my grandparents were my second parents, since most of the time my mom and dad couldn't be around because they had to work. My mom would spend entire days working at the Zócalo, which is a town's plaza selling traditional Oaxacan food. Every day, she would wake up at 4 a.m. to prepare the ingredients she would use to cook and would get home at midnight. And my dad would spend months in the United States working, so we wouldn't see my parents often. I don't have many memories of my whole family being together as a child, but that was just the reality of our life. After a couple years of saving up money, my mom decided that it was time for us to reunite with my dad, which is when we immigrated to the United States. My mom and younger brother, who was 4 at that time, crossed the border first, and my older brother, who was 9, and I, who was 6, crossed a couple months after. The first neighborhood we came to live in when we got to the United States was located in downtown LA, and it was not very safe. All 5 of us lived in a rundown studio apartment that was surrounded by violence and poverty. In that studio apartment, I remember telling my mom that I wanted a room for myself. But since the studio doesn't have any rooms, my mom created a made-up room in our closet for me to have my own space. She stacked a couple of plastic boxes in the closet, put a couple of soft blankets over them to act as my bed, and put some nice curtains outside of the closet that would act as my door. And that is how I got my first room. That is one of my favorite memories from my childhood. And I had so much fun in my closet room listening to music and drawing. So thanks, Mom. Not long after we arrived to the United States, my parents got separated, and my brothers and I moved in with my mom into a studio that was a couple of blocks away from our first apartment. My mom didn't want us to have another big change in our life so soon, like switching to a new elementary school, so we lived in the same neighborhood until we went off to middle school. At the age of 8, I had to learn how to navigate the neighborhood on my own, learn to take care of myself, and make sure that my younger brother was safe while my mom was working and my older brother was in school. A very important part of my childhood was the Red Shield Community Center, which was located right across my elementary school. Since my mom would have to work and couldn't pick us up after school, my brother and I would walk to Red Shield every day after school around 2 p.m. and spend our afternoons there until it closed at 5:30 and my mom could come pick us up. When my mom had to work late, my younger brother and I would have to walk home alone, and even though our apartment was not too far from the center, it was still scary. This community center holds a very special place in my heart because it is where I took my first swimming class, learned to play the guitar, and where I learned how to use a desktop and type, which laid the foundation for what I do now. All the instructors and staff at the Red Shield Community Center were really kind to us and understood that a lot of families relied on their kids coming here after school to keep them occupied by being at the library, playing in the computer lab, or playing sports, and keeping them off the streets. Another important part of my childhood was church, which I was very involved with. Through the Salvation Army, I learned how to play the piano, was part of the youth church band, and began giving back to my community by participating in lots of volunteering events, like preparing meal kits for the homeless every Thanksgiving and going to play music for the elderly and convalescent homes. My family and I found a community of support that helped us in the toughest of times through the Red Shield and Salvation Army, and for that I am so grateful. As a child, seeing my mom work 2 jobs to be able to provide for my family and not being able to alleviate some of the financial stress made me feel so helpless. I would always ask her what I could do to help, and she would always remind me that the only way that I could help and make her happy was by doing good in school. And so that's what I did. My mom brought us to this country not only to reunite us with my dad, but like so many other immigrant families, in search of a better life and education for us. I knew the sacrifices my mom had made for us, and the only way I could thank her was to stay focused on my education and go to college. Even though she didn't know what laid ahead for me or what college was going to be like, she knew by seeing other people with careers that having a college degree would make my life easier. An important part of my educational journey happened in high school, where I discovered my passion for math and science. I attended a magnet high school that was focused on math, science, and technology, and also college preparation, which I would commute to by using the school bus or public transportation, which would take about an hour and a half to get to. My high school years were challenging because my middle school hadn't really prepared me for the rigor of my high school classes, and it was also stressful having to balance honors, AP, and college classes with extracurriculars, commuting, and my at-home responsibilities. High school gave me a little taste of what was to come in college, but the rigor of college was a whole nother level. I feel grateful to have attended a high school where my teachers saw the potential in their students, and it was inspiring to see my teachers be so passionate about the subjects they were teaching. I have so much love and respect for educators because I know how impactful the teachers I had in my life were in helping me believe in myself and a better future through education. And thanks to the advice of my teachers, I decided to pursue engineering, which started it all. In high school, biology was one of my favorite subjects, and I knew that I wanted to do engineering, so that is how I decided on my major. I applied to college as a bioengineering major without fully knowing what that actually meant. As an 18-year-old, having to pick what you want to do for the rest of your life is a tough decision to make, but I did my best. The whole process of applying to college and figuring out how I was going to pay for college was very stressful. Having my parents pay for college was not an option for me. My family lived paycheck to paycheck, so I had to get scholarships because my mom would not be able to afford it. And thanks to the scholarships that Berkeley provided me with and the California Dream Act, I was able to pay for college. When you are the first in anything, like being the first person in your family to go to college, it is very mentally and emotionally exhausting having to figure out everything on your own. Thankfully, my magnet school counselors were able to provide some guidance, but the process of applying to college was still challenging nonetheless. Getting into UC Berkeley was a very emotional and validating moment for me. At the time when I got accepted into college, my family didn't really know what it meant to get into Berkeley because they had never heard of it, but I knew what it meant. It meant that all those hours of commuting to school, all those late nights doing homework and studying, and all the hard work of my parents and I had all been worth it. So as I opened the acceptance email, all I could do was sit alone in my room and cry because that email validated so many things in my life. It marked the beginning of a journey to a better life for me and my family. My 4 years at Berkeley were some of the most challenging and transformative years of my life. In college is where I got exposed to the world of computer science, thanks to an introduction class called The Beauty and Joy of Computing, which changed the course of my career because I switched my major from bioengineering to electrical engineering and computer science. In college is where I began developing my leadership skills. It is where I began to realize the power that each one of us has when we speak up, and where I met a community of support that is with me till this day. With all the good that I took from Berkeley, there were also a lot of difficult moments. Learning to live on my own in a new town and space where I saw very few students who looked like me was a painful experience. The culture shock of being one of a few, if not the only Latina in my engineering classes, made my first year really tough. Not seeing people from my community led me to think that those spaces and careers were not meant for us, which only intensified the imposter syndrome that I felt since I got to Berkeley. As a woman of color in engineering, I often felt like I had to hide parts of myself to fit in, like toning down my femininity to be taken more seriously and not talk about my background, so that others wouldn't know that I was low income or that I was born in Mexico, and further amplify the differences that we already had. As an 18-year-old who had never lived on her own, trying to fit in was the only way I knew how to navigate an environment that was so different from what I was used to. I hadn't yet built the confidence to own my story and show up fully in all spaces. So I did my best to try to blend in. I was able to find part of my support system thanks to the pre-engineering program that I attended 2 weeks prior to starting my first year of college, where I met other engineering students whom I felt comfortable being myself with. And my support system expanded during my 3rd year of college through Casa Joaquin, which is a leadership housing program that I was part of and where I met Dante and other students who could relate to my background. It was during my junior year where I began to feel empowered to start taking on leadership roles, to give back to my community by providing advice to students who were just making their way to college. My first leadership role in college happened when I became part of the executive board for the Hispanic Engineers and Scientists Club on campus. My second leadership role came when I got involved in launching Mentorum, a mentorship program that Dante, myself, and a couple of other students co-founded to connect first-generation students of color with mentors at Google. In college, I learned about the importance of networking and how it helps folks to get job opportunities. Mentorum was created with the goal of helping students like myself who didn't have a network an opportunity to start building their network with professionals in the tech industry who could share their wisdom, advice, and story of how they got into tech. Mentorum was the first social impact project that I had been a part of, which proved to me that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can in fact change the world. Thanks to the work that we did with Mentorum, Dante and I got the opportunity to go to Premios Juventud, an award show for Spanish-speaking celebrities, and get recognized for the work that we were doing in the community, which was an unreal experience that I didn't think I would ever be a part of. My 3rd year of college is also when I got my first industry internship. A recruiter from Pandora reached out to me after having come across my resume and after going through a couple of technical interviews, which in my opinion has been one of the best interview process that I have been a part of. I got a summer internship offer. This offer came after lots of bad interviews and rejections. It definitely wasn't my first try. Landing an internship in tech was not easy for me, but let me tell you, it is definitely possible. So if you're out there still looking for internships and jobs in tech, keep going, because I know that you will eventually land something. My summer internship was a really important milestone in my career because it was my first exposure to working in tech. At the end of my summer internship, I got an offer to come back to Pandora as a full-time software engineer after graduating from college. And this is one of the reasons why I'm such a big advocate of applying to internships while you're still in school, because internships provide a pathway into a full-time role and secure jobs for students after graduation. I graduated from UC Berkeley in May of 2017. Graduation day was a very special moment for me because both my parents and grandparents were able to be present for the ceremony. As you can imagine, there were lots of happy tears that day because I was becoming the first college graduate in my family, an honor which I am so happy to carry. That day was also a moment of reflection and validation for both my parents and grandparents. It meant that all the tough times they had faced in their lives was not for nothing because it had led us to that moment. Since my family came to this country, their goal had been for their kids to graduate from college someday. That was also what I wanted, and accomplishing that was a dream come true. After graduation, I had to make the transition from being a full-time student to a working professional, which was a new experience. Any transition can have its challenges, but I feel like I was better equipped at navigating it thanks to my college experience and my summer internship. As soon as I began working full-time, I felt like I had to do something with all the knowledge that I had accumulated over my 4 years at Berkeley. I had so many tips on how to navigate college and apply to scholarships and internships. This was all information that I wish I had when I began college because it would have made my college experience a lot easier. In my attempt to give back all the knowledge I had gained in college to help other students, I decided to launch the Latinx Engineering Leadership Program, or LELP, which was a mentorship program to help Latina first and second year students studying computer science land their first internship in the tech industry, which both Dante and I ran for 2 years. Thanks to the work that we were doing with LELP, we won the Wesley Prize, which is an award given to 3 social impact innovators in California. As part of the application process, all the finalists have to present their idea to the judges and other finalists, and then the judges decide after who gets the award. I remember that after the demo day was over, I told Dante, I don't think we're gonna win, but that's okay because everyone is doing such incredible work. The next day, we got an email at 8 a.m. saying that we got the prize, which was unreal. I asked myself, what is happening, like 3 times until the news fully sank in. The point of the story is, don't underestimate yourself because you have more impact on others than you fully realize. Something that has been important for both Dante and I is to share our experience and any advice that has helped us in our journey with others, which is why we began getting involved in speaking engagements ever since college by participating in panels, conferences, and hosting workshops. And through all of that, we have been able to meet a lot of students who continuously reach out to us with questions. And we began to notice that the questions we would get from students were pretty similar. And in order to help more students and scale our advice, we decided to launch DNI, our YouTube channel. In 2019, we created this channel with the goal of sharing advice that we wish we had early on in our careers with as many folks as possible. Both Dante and I are very passionate about diversity and inclusion. So we named this channel DNI not only because it spells out our initials, but also because it represents what we are working towards, which is to create more diverse and inclusive spaces in tech. The culmination of all the chapters in my life lead me to where I am today. Someone who is still growing and trying to figure out who she is. I don't have it all figured out, but that's okay, because you don't need to have it all figured out to make a difference. This is my story, but it is definitely not the only one. It is important and powerful to share our stories so that folks in every community can feel seen and represented. If anything resonated with you and you're comfortable sharing, please let me know in the comments down below. Everyone's story matters, and everyone deserves to be seen. Thank you for taking the time to get to know me a little better. My name is Itzel. I am a Latina, dreamer, software engineer, and so much more. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in our next video.